The front door slammed, and the apartment went quiet like it got unplugged. Mom said back soon, and left in slippers, no coat, no bag. I watched her go from the peephole until the hallway light swallowed her. I stood there with my forehead on the door like I could feel her through it. The lock didn't even catch right. I slid the chain anyway because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. My brother sat on the carpet with his toy truck, pushing it into the wall over and over. He asked where she went. I told him store, even though I didn't believe it. I didn't believe anything she said when she got that smile, the one that looked happy but didn't reach her eyes. It meant she had somewhere else to be, and we weren't it. I fed him cereal straight from the box because I didn't want dishes. The sink already stank. There were cups with crusty rings, a pan with dried eggs glued to it, and the sponge felt like a dead animal. He ate fast, like he was scared the food would disappear. I kept my own mouth dry because if I ate, it made the night feel official, like we were settling in. The clock kept moving. The radiator clanged. The hallway outside stayed dead. I opened the fridge, saw a half bottle of milk, and shut it like that solved anything. I checked the cabinet like an idiot. 2 ramen packs, peanut butter with a knife stuck in it, and a can of green beans. I did the math in my head like I was my own parent. I hated myself for being good at it. I tried calling her phone from the corded one, straight to voicemail. Her recorded voice sounded normal, and that pissed me off more than anything. I didn't leave a message because I didn't want to hear myself beg. I kept pacing, stopping, listening, pacing again. Every time the building made a noise, pipes, someone's TV, a door 2 floors down, I flinched like it was her key in our lock. My brother started crying, loud, ugly crying, the kind that turns into choking. I hissed at him to shut up because crying makes adults notice you, and I didn't want the wrong ones. The landlord liked to check in. The neighbor across the hall liked to gossip. Cops like to show up pissed off like you inconvenienced them. I didn't want any of that. I wanted Mom to come back, but I also didn't want anyone else to know she was gone. That's the kind of twisted shit kids learn quick. He kept crying anyway. He kicked the coffee table and knocked over a stack of mail. I grabbed him under the arms and dragged him to the couch. I sat him down hard. He slid off and crawled toward the door, reaching like he could open it and find her on the other side. I yanked him back by the shirt, and he shrieked. I told him to stop, told him he was making it worse, like he had control of any of it. I hated the sound of my own voice because it sounded like hers. Hours went by. The TV remote had dead batteries, so the screen just sat black, reflecting us like a window. I kept checking the peephole and seeing the same empty hallway, the same scuffed carpet, the same light buzzing. I started getting mad. Not scared mad. Real mad. Like, who the fuck does that? Who walks out like it's nothing and leaves 2 kids in a shitty apartment with a half fridge and no clue? I kept arguing with her in my head. I kept winning. It didn't help. My brother fell asleep with cereal dust on his face and his mouth open. I didn't move him because if I moved him, he'd wake up and cry again. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and kept my shoes on. I watched the door. I watched the clock. I listened to the building breathe. Someone knocked around midnight. Not a polite knock. Fast, impatient, like they knew we were there. I didn't answer. The knob turned anyway. It stopped, then turned again harder. The chain rattled, and my stomach dropped like I missed a step on stairs. I crawled up, trying not to make the floor creak. I put my eye to the peephole and couldn't see a face, just the blur of a shoulder close to the door, like whoever was leaned in and listened. I held my breath, and it felt like the air itself made noise. My brother stirred, made a small whine, and I slapped my hand over his mouth. He stared at me, confused, then scared. I shook my head hard at him. Don't. The knocking came again. Then a fist hit the door, and the frame rattled. The knob jerked like they wanted to rip it off. I didn't think stranger danger or any after-school special bullshit. I thought, they know Mom isn't here. I thought, they've done this before. I thought, if that chain snaps, I'm done. I dragged the kitchen chair to the door and shoved it under the handle like I'd seen on TV. My hand shook so hard, I kept dropping the chair leg. The chair scraped the floor loud, and I winced waiting for whoever was to react, but they just hit the door again, harder like the noise gave them a target. The chair trembled. The chain stretched tight. Dust fell from the top of the frame. My brother tried to run to the window, and I grabbed him by the back of his shirt and yanked him down like a dog. He started crying again, full volume, and I wanted to scream at him and hug him at the same time. I dragged him into the kitchen and shoved him behind the table like the table was a bunker. I pointed to my own mouth like keep it shut, and he nodded while still making noise because he was 4 and scared, and that's what 4-year-olds do. I dialed 911 on the corded phone because my little flip phone had no minutes. I crouched on the kitchen floor with the receiver pressed to my face and whispered our address and my name and kept my mouth close to the receiver like the walls listened. The operator asked questions and I answered in pieces. I said someone was trying to get in. I said my mom wasn't home. I said my brother was here. Saying it out loud made my throat burn. It made it real in a way my brain didn't want. The banging stopped right before the sirens. Like whoever it was had a clock in their head. Like they were listening for the same distant sound. 1 second, it was violence on the other side of the door. The next second, it was nothing, just quiet so thick my ears rang. I kept staring at the chain, waiting for it to snap anyway, like it could break from fear alone. Then the building filled with boots on stairs, radios crackling, keys clinking. The cops came up, knocked, then pushed in when I couldn't get the chair unstuck. I tried yanking it and it wedged tighter. One cop shoved past me and ripped it free like it was a toy. The door swung open and hallway air hit my face. A flashlight swept our apartment like we were a crime scene. One of them looked at my brother's cereal dust and the empty kitchen and swore under his breath. Another one asked where my mom was, and I said store again because it was the only lie I had that sounded normal. They looked around anyway, checked the bedroom, checked the bathroom, looked at the chain like I'd done something wrong by using it. They asked if I saw who knocked. I said no. I didn't tell them how close the shoulder was to the peephole, how it felt like someone was breathing into the door. I didn't want them rolling their eyes at a kid. They kept us in the living room while they talked into their radios. My brother crawled into my lap and shook. I kept rubbing his back, fast like I could rub the fear out of him. I started getting angry again, this time at the cops for standing there like it was a routine. Like kids calling 911 was just another shift problem. Mom came back at dawn, smiling too wide, acting like we were dramatic. I heard her slippers on the stairs, and my whole body went stiff. When she saw the cops, she didn't look sorry. She laughed, like it was embarrassing for her, like we'd made a scene. She started talking fast, hands flying, blaming me without saying the words. I watched her eyes go past us to the neighbors' cracked doors, checking who saw. That did it. Something snapped in my chest. I didn't want her hug. I didn't want her excuses. I wanted her to shut up. The cops didn't care. They cuffed her in the hallway, while neighbors watched through cracked doors like it was a show. She twisted and cursed and called my name like I betrayed her. She tried to look at me like I was supposed to fix it, like I was supposed to protect her from consequences. I stood there holding my brother, and I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just watched them walk her away and felt this nasty mix of relief and guilt in my gut. Like I swallowed something sharp. A social worker showed up later with a clipboard and that careful voice adults use when they're pretending this is normal. She gave me a blanket and a granola bar and told me I did good. I ate the bar because my hands needed something to do. I kept staring at the door because the worst part wasn't the knock. The worst part was how normal it felt to make myself the adult at 9. I walked into school with my mom's old coat and a lunch that smelled like eggs. The kids smelled it before they saw me. They started calling me Stink the first week and never stopped. It wasn't clever, it was just easy. One kid said it loud, the others repeated it, and suddenly it was my name. I tried to keep my lunch sealed until the last second. I tried to eat fast and throw the trash away before anyone noticed. It didn't work. The smell clung to the container, then to my hands, then to my desk. Kids would lean in, wrinkle their noses, and act like I was doing it on purpose. I stopped asking my mom to change what she packed because every time I did, she'd snap about money and tell me to be grateful I had food at all. At recess, they didn't hit me right away. They did the slow stuff first. They followed. They copied my stutter. They waited until teachers turned their heads, then shoved my books in the snow and stepped on them like it was funny. They'd do it in little bursts, testing how far they could go without getting caught. If I reached down, a boot would slide the book away. If I stood up too fast, they'd flinch back and throw their hands up like I was the violent one. The duty teachers saw the crowd, heard the noise, and kept scanning the yard like they were guarding a prison instead of fucking kids. I started doing quiet math to survive the day, what path had fewer people, which bathroom stall latched, how long I could stay inside before an adult accused me of hiding. My asthma made it worse because it gave them a lever. Cold air, running, stress, all of it tightened my chest. I carried my inhaler like it was a key. It stayed in the front pocket of my backpack, so I could reach it without digging. I checked it constantly, thumb on the canister, because the idea of not finding it when I needed it made my skin crawl. Teachers knew I had asthma. The nurse had my file. None of that made anyone careful. It just made me look like an easy panic button. One day, they grabbed my backpack and ran for the equipment shed by the field. I chased because I needed my inhaler. My lungs already started to lock up, and I could taste panic. I didn't decide to chase. My body moved before my brain caught up. They didn't sprint. They jogged, laughing, glancing back to make sure I stayed hooked. Snow had that crust on top, and my boots punched through it every step. Cold air knifed down my throat, and my breathing turned thin fast. I yelled at them to stop, and it came out broken because my stutter always showed up when I needed words the most. The shed sat by the fence, a dented metal closet full of rakes and balls and salt buckets. The door always stuck and screeched when you yanked it open. They shoved it wide anyway, dragged my backpack inside, and one of them turned and shoved me in the chest. Not hard enough to leave a mark, hard enough to knock me into slush and make the others howl. I got up swearing because pain does that, and that only made them happier. I lunged for my bag, grabbed a strap, and they yanked me forward like I was a dog on a leash. They jammed me inside and slammed the door. The latch clicked. Someone dragged a rake handle through the hasp from the outside. The sound was small, with scraping metal, yet it landed in my gut like a punch. I grabbed the inside handle and pulled. Nothing. I slammed my shoulder into the door and the metal rang, the noise bouncing around the tiny space. It smelled like rust and wet dirt. Light barely got in, just a gray seam at the bottom where snow glare leaked through. I kicked the door until my toe went numb. I yelled until my voice cracked. The wind pushed snow through the gaps, and dust fell from the ceiling into my eyes. I heard them laughing and walking away, like they'd set a trap and got bored. Their footsteps faded into the general recess noise, and then even that noise thinned as kids lined up to go inside. That's when the fear really hit. Nobody was coming because nobody even knew I was missing, and if they did notice, they'd assume I was skipping or hiding. My breathing turned into short bites. I tried to inhale, and it stopped halfway, like a door catching on a chain. I dropped to my knees and ripped my bag open in the dark. Hands shaking so bad, I kept grabbing the wrong pocket. Pencils spilled. A binder clip snapped and skittered under a shelf. I found the inhaler case and felt relief for half a second, like a match flaring. Then my fingers closed on the inhaler and it felt wrong, loose, spent. I clawed through my bag in the dark and found the inhaler crushed at the bottom, snapped like a toy. I hit the plastic against my palm and nothing came out. I pressed it to my mouth anyway because my body wanted the ritual. I shoved the canister. Click. Nothing. I tried again, harder. Click. Still nothing. My chest started to burn. I tried to slow down, tried to count breaths like the counselor once told me, but I couldn't even get a full count in before my lungs stole it back. I tried to stay calm and failed. I slid down the door and started seeing spots. My head went light, then heavy. I thought about sleeping because sleeping sounded easy and my brain started lying to me. It told me I was being dramatic. It told me the door would open any second. Then another part of me said, flat and ugly. If you pass out in here, you'll just be quiet. I scraped my nails on the door until they stung and begged out loud. Not even to anyone specific, just into the metal. Talking about thick. My ears rang. My fingers tingled like they were full of static. I pressed my face to my sleeve, and the fabric smelled like old smoke from the coat. And that smell made me furious because it reminded me of home, of my mom working late, not knowing her kid was folded up on a shed floor, trying not to die during fucking recess. I kept forcing tiny breaths like I was sipping air through a straw, and I waited for the blackout that felt like it was circling. A janitor finally opened the shed an hour later. He stared at me on the floor and said I should quit messing around. He didn't run. He didn't shout for help. He stood there with his keys and his mop bucket like I was a problem he didn't want. I tried to speak, and it came out as a wet wheeze. I held up the broken inhaler like proof. He sighed, muttered that I shouldn't be in there, then walked away and left the door wide like he'd done me a favor. I stumbled out after him, and a teacher saw me and snapped at me for being late, like I'd just been wandering. I tried to point at my chest and the broken plastic in my hand, and she told me to stop making faces and get inside. That's when I realized how alone you can be in a building full of adults. I crawled toward the main doors because my legs felt wrong. Cold air hit my lungs, and they clamped again, and I had to lean on the wall and take tiny breaths just to stay upright. Kids filed inside, and nobody stopped. When I finally made it to the nurse, she handed me a spare inhaler and watched me use it like she was checking a box. The medicine loosened things enough to keep me standing. She asked what happened, and I got halfway through before her face hardened into that look adults get when they've already chosen the story. She told me I shouldn't chase other kids, and I should avoid trouble. She wrote a note about anxiety on my sheet, like my lungs were just my feelings acting up, and she sent me back to class with that paper like it fixed anything. At home, my mom saw the broken inhaler and went straight to anger because anger was easier than fear. She asked what I did. I told her. She said I needed to stop making myself a target. She said boys were rough and it would pass. She said she didn't have time to go yell at the school and make things worse. I asked her to call anyway, and she told me to stop being so fucking dramatic like my lungs hadn't almost quit an hour earlier. The fight burned me out so fast I just stood there and nodded because even arguing took air. I didn't tell anyone what happened because I already knew the answer. Boys will be boys. Stop being so fucking dramatic. You're fine. I learned to keep my inhaler on my body, not in my bag. I learned to stop running even when they chased me, because running meant wheezing, and wheezing meant attention, and attention meant punishment. I carried that shed around in my chest for years. Anytime a room got crowded or a door stuck, I'd feel that latch click again, and my body would start counting breaths without asking me. Years later, I saw one of those kids on the news with a badge and a clean haircut, talking about protecting the community. The camera caught his smile, and I recognized it immediately, the same little smug curl like he just won something. I felt my hands go slick, and I had to swallow to keep from wheezing in my own living room. All I could think was how close he'd come to watching me stop breathing and how nobody ever made him answer for it. I shut the TV off, and my chest tightened like I was back in that shed, counting breaths, waiting for a door that didn't have to stay shut. My stepdad's keys had a sound, not the jingle, the heavy scrape when he dropped them on the counter and started looking for someone to blame. I learned that sound before I learned multiplication. The scrape hit and my stomach would drop. I'd be mid-bite, mid-math problem, mid-cartoon, and my hand would already be moving. I'd snag my little sister's wrist and pull her up. Sometimes she'd fight me because she didn't understand yet. She'd whisper whine, try to sit back down, try to grab her stuffed animal. I'd get mad at her for being a kid. I'd squeeze her wrist too hard and drag her anyway. I hated myself for that, but I hated what happened if we were still out there when he came hunting. The closet was the only place that bought us a few seconds. It wasn't some fun hide-and-seek spot. It was cramped and it stank. Coats that reeked of cigarettes, motor oil, old sweat. His coats. We'd wedge ourselves behind them and crouch on the shoes. I'd tuck my sister in tight, her knees against her chest, my arm around her like a clamp. If she started to cry, I'd cover her mouth and breathe through my nose so I wouldn't make a sound. The coats would brush my face and leave that stale, smoke taste on my tongue. Then he'd move through the house. He didn't walk like a normal person. He stomped. He slammed cabinets like the dishes owed him money. He yanked drawers open and punched them shut. If a door didn't swing fast enough, he'd kick it, even if no one was behind it. He'd bang the bathroom door, then the pantry, then the fridge, like he was checking every room for a reason to explode. If the TV was too loud, it was our fault. If it was too quiet, it was our fault. If the air felt wrong, it was our fault. He'd talk in that angry mumble about bills, about respect, about how we all made his life harder. Sometimes he'd walk past the closet and stop. That pause was a whole different kind of fear. The stomping meant he was busy tearing the house apart. The pause meant he was thinking about us. I'd watch the thin strip of light under the door go dark when his shadow filled it. He'd stand there so still I'd start hearing things that weren't there. My sister's breath, my own heartbeat, the fabric of the coats settling. Every time my sister shifted, even a tiny shuffle, I'd pinch her shoulder to make her freeze. Once he wrapped his keys on the knob, slow, like he was counting, and my sister bit my shirt to keep quiet. And yeah, sometimes he opened the closet. The hinges never creaked. He kept them oiled. He liked the surprise. The door would yank open and the coats would swing and slap my face. And there he'd be, filling the doorway like a wall, eyes on me like I'd done something disgusting. My sister would shrink back, and I'd shove her behind me on instinct, like my body believed it could block him if I just tried hard enough. He'd grab my arm and drag me out by it, not gentle, not quick. His grip felt like a tool, thumb digging in, skin burning. He'd haul me into the kitchen under the bright light, so there was nowhere to hide my face. Not to talk, to prove a point. He'd squeeze until my arm went numb and tell me nobody would believe a kid who makes shit up. He'd say it with this calm certainty, like he was doing me a favor by killing any hope early. Then he'd shove me back into the dark, like putting something away, like the dark was his drawer and I was the thing he kept in it. My mom watched it happen more times than I can count. She'd stand at the sink with her hands in dishwater and keep scrubbing the same plate like it was a job. If I tried to look at her, she'd look anywhere else. If he started in, she'd do this tight whisper, just do what he says, like obedience was armor. Later, when he was gone, she'd cry and tell me he was stressed, that he didn't mean it, that I had to stop setting him off. I remember one time I snapped and told her, shaky and ugly, that he didn't get to be stressed and take it out on us, and she slapped her wet hand on the counter and told me to shut up before he heard. I nodded and swallowed it, because even being right didn't feed us or get us out. I learned the house by sounds. Microwave beep meant he was hungry and about to blame someone for it. Beer and hiss meant the night would stretch and get mean. The click of his belt buckle meant keep my sister out of sight. But the keys were the warning siren. Keys meant he was home. Keys meant the air changed. At school, I flinched at stupid things. A janitor dropping a ring of keys would make my hands sweat. Teachers would ask why I kept scanning the room, why I always chose the seat near the door, why I jumped when someone came up behind me. I lied fast because lying kept things smooth. Once a teacher saw a bruise on my arm and asked if I played sports. I said yes. She stared at me too long. My face got hot. I could feel the words sitting in my throat like vomit. Please help, take us. Then I pictured my stepdad's hand closing on my arm and my mom turning her face away, and I swallowed the words and smiled like a liar. One night, he passed out on the living room carpet with the TV still on. That didn't happen often. He liked the couch. He liked looking in control, even when he was drunk. That night, he just dropped, face turned toward the screen, one arm flung out like he'd been thrown. The TV kept laughing at nothing. The blue light made his face look dead. The house felt wrong when he slept out in the open, like the trap was pretending to be safe. I waited a long time. I watched his chest rise and fall. I watched his fingers, waiting for that little twitch he'd do right before he snapped awake. I kept thinking about the phone in the kitchen and how the cord reached the wall. I kept thinking if I could just call somebody once, just once, maybe it changes something. I crawled down the hall anyway, slow, knees and palms on the floor so the boards wouldn't creak, and opened the closet. My sister was asleep in there, curled up under his coats like a stray animal. I wanted to be mad at my mom for letting that be normal. I want to be mad at my sister for sleeping through it. Mostly I was just tired. I lifted her out and carried her to bed. She was warm and heavy and limp. And for a second, I felt this dumb, sharp hope, like I could carry her out of our whole life if I held on tight enough. I laid her down, pulled the blanket up, and backed out. On the way back, I stepped on a bottle cap, and it snapped loud. The sound shot through the room. My whole body went cold. The cap skittered across the floor, and I froze mid-step. His eyes opened. He didn't sit up. He just stared at me with that flat face, then smiled like he caught me doing something wrong. I ran to the phone and tried to dial. My fingers shook so bad I hit the wrong numbers. I tried again. I could hear him behind me, not rushing, just getting up slow, like he had all the time in the world to stop me. He yanked the cord from the wall and threw the receiver at my feet. Plastic shattered. The sound was final, like he'd snapped the last normal thing in the house. He didn't even have to say much. He just pointed at the door like he wanted me outside in the cold. I didn't go. I stood there shaking and stared back because I ran out of places to hide. My throat burned. My hands balled into fists, and I forced them open again because fists felt like a challenge and I didn't need extra reasons for him. I kept thinking about my sister asleep down the hall. If I walked out, he'd walk in there. If I begged, he'd enjoy it. If I cried, he'd get louder. So I just stood there and stared back, try to look like I wasn't made of paper. He took a step like he might shove me, then stopped. His smile slipped. He hated when I didn't scramble. He muttered something under his breath, kicked a piece of the broken phone into the corner, and dropped back onto the carpet like the moment didn't matter. Like I was a show he could pause whenever he wanted. I didn't sleep. I sat on the hallway floor with my back against my sister's door and listened to him breathe, waiting for the scrape of keys again, even though he was already home. Every time the TV volume shifted, every time he rolled, my muscles locked. Morning came, and he acted normal. He made pancakes. He called me buddy. My sister ate fast and didn't look up once. My mom laughed too loud at his jokes, like noise could plaster over the broken phone and the bottle cap and the way my arm still throbbed under my sleeve. I'm grown now, and I still flinch when I hear keys at a counter. I still pick out hiding spots in new rooms without meaning to. The kid version of me never moved out. He just learned to stand up straight while he waited for the sound.